Well, hello everybody. Welcome to 12 Ronnie's weekly question and answer for starting a new business. And today I'm Christopher Norris, and I've got my friend Bill Murray with me. And about halfway through today, we're going to bring on our other partner in this venture, Simon Chrisman. And Bill, so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I think we're going to talk about how to get investment ready and what are the characteristics of teams that are so and and how to get there.
Okay, so where do you want to start? Have you got a favorite question? What's your priority, do you think?
Well, I mean, we could start with the word team. For a lot of people, they start out as the proverbial solopreneur. But what is the path? Is that a viable path to stay solo, and or what are the options of bringing on other founders or other people that might help you maybe fill in some of the gaps that you have from a skill standpoint to help you get to where you want to get faster, which is not always releasing your product, but it's learning whether or not you should. So what does that look like? Do you think, Chris?
Well, I think, talking about team, I think in terms of being investment ready, I think if you're an investor, you want to make sure that the skills and the experience and the talents of the people in the team are worthy of investment. So if you're lacking something which is really important, then essentially you're not ready, are you, by definition? So.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to invest in a solopreneur, if you're asking for a significant investment, because it's just unlikely that one person has all the skills needed. And different people talk about the different sort of archetypes, but for me, it's a hacker, hustler, designer, and visionary. Yeah. Yes. And they go by different names, but yes, those are very different. That visionary and the designer are often opposites. The designer might be an introvert, whereas the visionary has to be that extrovert and has to have that clear vision and be always looking down the road. So having both of those at the same time would be hard. It's not unheard of, but I think you're doing yourself a favor if you bring somebody else on. So then the question becomes, how do you choose somebody to be a co-founder with you?
Well, I think you need somebody that complements your skills. So, if you're a hustler, let's say, then you need somebody who's a visionary. You need somebody who's different from you. You don't want two hustlers in the same team. Otherwise, you're going to clash or, butt together, aren't you? Yeah. No, one thing I wanted to pick up on what you said is that, the only way to be successful as a solo entrepreneur without those other team members who've got complementary skills is to have other data points of evidence which supersede the need for somebody else. So if you've already pre-sold 1 million units, then you're going to get investment, aren't you? So
absolutely.
So you need to have other things going for you if you don't have that team in place.
Absolutely. When we think of maybe moving to kind of the market and product sort of concepts, thinking about your market, what do you look at, Chris, when you're trying to understand the size of your market and the nature of it, and kind of that go-to-market mentality that you have to have if you're going to launch?
It's a process, isn't it? You need to do some research, essentially, and you need to do some thinking. And part of that thinking that we like to tell people about is having a business model canvas that people fill out honestly. There's no point in pulling the wool over your own eyes because you're not going to get anywhere then. And also having a validation proposition canvas as well, a value proposition canvas, and also working out who your customers are. And the only way in which you can actually sort of work out in practical terms whether those things are true is to actually try it out and find some customers or some pre-launch customers. So, Bill, maybe you can flesh out what I've said there to help people understand a bit more.
Yeah, when I'm talking to teams, I talk in terms of something called TAM, SAM, SOM, and TAM is total addressable market. That's like, what's the biggest possible market for your product? The maximum number of people that could ever use your product or want it. Now, you're not going to be able to get all those people, but that's a start. Then you work your way down to SAM, which is serviceable addressable market. That's the market you can reach. So in the TAM, there are people you just can't reach, or too expensive to reach, or just you wouldn't want to. So SAM becomes kind of, okay, this is the market that I can reach with the kind of launch that I'm looking at doing. And then underneath that is then SOM is share of market. Well, if I can address this group of people, what percentage of them could I realistically bring in? And this is where people start lying on the Dragon's Den and on the American one is.
And I think the other thing too, all of this is within the context of, the vast majority of people launching businesses don't have any money. So these are lean startups. They're not kind of, if you're in the lucky position of having inherited wealth, then I suppose there are different things that come into play. But even then, you don't want to spend your fortune on some horse in the Kentucky Derby, do you really? So you need to be doing your research and making sure you're backing a winner before you go out there on a limb.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes down to that segmentation. So get out there and talk to your customers, understand who is buying, and that will help really inform that SAM and SOM number is okay. Here are the people that are rushing to my product right now, and then that can help give you a little bit better idea of what your real market is going to be, at least initially. Obviously, over time you continue to expand your market, or it may even change, but. Getting really good at segmenting, understanding the difference between customer A and customer B, even though they look a lot alike, they may have very specific triggers that emotionally bring them to your value proposition versus not. And of course, emotions are the thing. I was just reading an article the other day about should products. Everyone's got a product in their mind that people should want. Everyone should want this. But should is should be the top word on the gravestone of many.
You just triggered a memory. I remember even when I was at primary school, watching educational programs on TV about the future of transport was going to be people wearing jetpacks. And I mean, that's still not happened, and people are still talking about people wearing jetpacks, aren't they? So.
Well, it's kind of like the Segway vehicle. Everybody should want one of these. I mean, this is the way people should want to go move around in the future. Well, they didn't, in understanding that in the moment, and they still sell a few, so they've got this very niche market. But understanding that is really important, because you can spend all that money you're talking about. You don't have a lot of funds. You can spend all that money trying to market to people who quite simply will never come to your value proposition because they can't or they won't.
And the other thing with segments is, in order to have a viable segment, those people have got to have money.
Yeah.
So it's all very well appealing to an area in the market, but if they're not going to be able to afford to buy your product, however cheap it is, then you've not got a business, have you? Unless you're prepared to be a philanthropist or wait until you can bring more people into your target audience for customers, or maybe make those initial customers, the core audience, into advocates so you can go and spread the word, I guess, but I guess that takes us on to the next thing, which is like the competitive landscape, isn't it? I mean, how would you test whether or not you've got a chance in a competitive environment, Bill?
Well, I think the first thing that I like to do with my teams is actually understand the competitors' products really well. Who's using them and why. And I've even had teams that have taken competitors' products and white labeled them and given them back to customers, and watched them use those products, and then understood both the positives and the gaps that product has. You being able to watch them very, very closely, and then understanding where their place in the market might be, because pushing out a competitor is a pretty tall order, but finding that niche market, at least to start out with, you start small, but find that niche market and then building from there is much better than trying to say, well, our hamburger is better than McDonald's. Well, good luck on that one.
Yeah.
But you could say our hamburger is more healthy than McDonald's.
Yes.
And then you work your way in. So I think that's really key.
Yeah, and the opposite to that is the kind of the blue ocean shift model, where you find yourself in an ocean and there's nobody there, and that's a bit worrying. because you're kind of wondering, well, where is everybody?
Yeah, why isn't everybody doing this?
Yeah, why am I the only one here? That's you need to be pretty sure you've got a market before you launch blindly into an environment where nobody else exists.
Yeah, it reminds me of another kind of rule of thumb I give to the teams I work with. Your customer is someone who has the problem. They know they have the problem. They have a budget to fix it and the desire to do so. So you have to have all these things, and a lot of them are very emotional. And again, people start shoulding. Well, they should want this. They should want this. Well, perhaps they should, but at the end of the day, people it's the system one, system two thinking. People buy first emotionally, and then they justify later with logic. And they may make irrational decisions, as people do. I mean, this is behavioral economics. We've talked about before. It's irrational people doing irrational things, as opposed to economics is rational people doing rational things. Economic works sometimes in big groups of people, but it doesn't work when you get right down to the individual person, because they're making those decisions in the moment based on a very specific and very deeply personal set of circumstances. And as the entrepreneur, you have to understand that moment, not just who they are, but in that moment when they have the opportunity to access your value proposition, because that will explain to you why they are either doing it or they aren't.
Yeah, and another aspect of being investment ready is, let's say you've had your idea. I mean, how far down the line do you need to be with developing your product or service before you can actually start talking about it with people who might be interested in supporting you financially?
Yeah, that's a great question. But it comes down to that investor. What is their risk tolerance? Again, you watch a show like Dragon's Den or what's the American one again?
Shark Tank.
Shark Tank. Thank you. Remember the British one, but not the American one. And so you've got 4 or 5 different people there, and they all have different risk tolerances. They're ready to take on different types of risks. So that's the thing. You have to understand the investors that you're going to be talking to. And well, for these investors, they got to have, and you can look at what they've invested in the past. Well, the last time they invested in something, it had, 1,000 customers or 10,000 customers, or it had, 10,000 pre-orders or whatever it is. You can look at their track record, and then that's where you have to understand that you have to be, because they're not going to take anything less because it's too big of a risk.
Yeah. So how do you know when you've got an MVP? When is an MVP not quite an MVP, if you know something?
Well, the MVP, the classic, the Eric Ries definition of MVP is the smallest thing that you can build to test your riskiest assumption. So if you have your riskiest assumption, customer will, access the product at this moment. And then, your MVP is testing whether or not you can actually get that customer to change their behavior in that moment. So that may be good enough if you can show them, hey, people are buying. I'm able to capture them in this moment, and I'm getting them to buy. Maybe that's good enough. An MVP is never a fully fleshed out product. It isn't even a prototype according to some definitions. So, you may need to have a scalable prototype, which then comes from your MVP, because your MVP then kind of informs what the prototype has to look like. So typically your investor is going to have to be able to touch something, whereas your initial product, your customer, is probably intangible, just enough to get them excited. But the investor is going to have to be able to hold it in his hand. Otherwise, there's nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, another couple of things which I'm going to take together is that you need some professional advice about whether or not you're ready for investment. Yeah. So there's things like financials, and also, legal aspects, and also things like setting up a business. Have you done that properly? Yeah. And when do you take the decision to actually take that advice? Because if you're not ready, then there's no point in setting up the business, is there? So
yeah, and the investor is going to want to make sure that you've got all the legal stuff taken care of, that you're a legal business, and that you're paying taxes, and because they don't want to invest in someone that's going to get arrested, and thrown in jail.
It's true, yeah. What was it? Somebody was saying the other day that one of the co-founders was in jail or something because they committed some terrible crime or something, and it was like, you're not going to invest in somebody who's about to go to jail. So
no,
yeah. And that's actually, one of the, well, we're coming towards the end of this section. One of the things is about risk management. So if you've got somebody who's a co-founder who's who's got some kind of personal issue, then that's a bit of a risk, isn't it? So to go forward on that basis.
Yeah, in the interpersonal relationships of the team. Really good investors don't invest in products; they invest in teams, because they see a team and they look at the team and say, this team could perfect fusion if we put them up to it. This thing that they're doing right now looks good, but even if it doesn't work out, I want to be there for the next thing or the thing that comes out of this thing.
Yeah.
So that's what really the big time investors look at is those really great teams, kind of taking us back to where we started today.
So I mean, what would you say are the big risks that people need to be aware of before they can consider themselves being investment ready?
Well, do I have all the skills required? Do I have a team of people around me that's advising me well enough that I'm not going to make a very expensive and very simple mistake, legal or tax or anything else? Do I understand my customer, as well or better than they understand themselves? And do I have a working prototype, a proof of concept that I can address a customer with a problem at a very specific time, and I can do it over and over again?
And also, specifically in the context of the States, you need to know about sales tax as well, which is very complicated. Just the last question before we bring Simon in. Clearly, in order to be investment ready, investors need to think that you've got the potential to grow and scale and become really successful. So maybe you could just share your thoughts about that in terms of investors. So.
Yeah, it's about telling a really great story, and I'm working with some people right now who are trying to do just that. And it's funny, storytelling comes natural to human beings. We've been doing it for thousands of years. You can go to France and look at the cave walls, and you can see wonderful stories that people were telling thousands of years ago. But the funny thing is that breaks down suddenly when we start talking about our startup. We're trying to articulate that sort of 3-act play. This is our customer before. This is the thing that we took them through, and this is where they are now. Just that 3-act play seems really, really hard to do, but I think it's because of when it's your thing. And when you're trying to explain it to someone else that has no background, no understanding of it. So getting advice, getting really great people around you to help tell that story is the most important thing, because you could have the $1 billion idea, but if you tell a lousy story, you're never going to get a dime.
Okay.
So tell that great story. And there's lots of resources to do that and lots of great people who can help.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll return to many of these issues in future sessions, but for now, that's been a great discussion. Thank you, Bill. What I'm going to do now is bring Simon in, and then remove myself, and Simon's going to take everybody through the a kind of workshop phase of this particular session today. So I'm going to bring Simon on now. So see you later, Bill. Okay, bye-bye.
Good to see you.
And I'm going to remove myself right now. So bye, and I'll leave you to it. Have fun.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Bill. That was a fascinating discussion, actually, about being investment ready. There's so many different aspects to it. There's no one killer. This is what it takes to be. And I guess, and from listening to the conversation, it's a bit of an art as well as a science in being ready to take outside investment. But it's something there's an enormous demand for. And this is partly where at 12 Ronnies, we've slightly pivoted what we're doing towards also being able to address the segment who want investment, because it's a segment that everybody seems to want money for investment, other people's money to help fund their business, but it's really hard to get, and it's not often the best route to go, because investors have slightly different requirements, such as they'd much prefer to scale sales than invest in you playing around to see if you've got a good business idea. What I wanted to chat about, Bill, and just briefly in the remainder of this, is the last week's live stream was all about quizzes and how quizzes can be important in onboarding people and audiences. And we demonstrated a quiz that we put together for idea validation. But I wanted to show you a quiz, or more of an assessment that we've done for people that are interested or want to seek investment. And this quiz is a second stage quiz. It really comes from our initial startup quiz, which is really asking people, what stage are you at? What have you done? How far are you along? And then we try to guide you towards saying, well, you're maybe not ready for this, or you're ready for this, and we take them through. But for those that are interested in how we can help them with investment, we've put together an assessment to see whether we can help them and what we can do to help them. And I wanted to show you this, Bill, and to seek some feedback, to show the audience this is our, if you like, our MVP on this part of things. So it'd be nice to get some feedback. So I'm going to do some screen sharing here. First of all, the assessment I'm going to show you is you can find on our 12 Ronnies website under Launch Plan. You'll see that on the side things. I'm going to do a screen share now of, there we go.
Quizzes are fun. They're like, as long as you're not in school and if your grades are depending on it, but they're inherently kind of mysterious and unknown. I mean, nobody would take a quiz if they already knew all the questions and the answers. So quizzes are great because they surprise you and they kind of pull you out of things. I think was what I like about, even just fun quizzes you find on the internet, that kind of thing. They kind of pull you out of your thought processes, and they give you a different point of view, which I think is really valuable. So I'm curious to see what you have here.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we've done here is we're taking people down a pathway to understand from what they're saying where they are in seeking investments. Now, this is part of our general launch plan. And to give some context here is people have got to the stage or have come to us and saying, right, we want to launch our business. What do we need to do now? Or is there something that we can do to give us an advantage? And our sole focus has been really on bootstrapped startups. So we've mainly been focused on writing plans, real business plans, not fantasy plans, but real business plans with our ecosystem of service providers. So if one of your goals is to find your first customers, how are you going to do that? What strategies? Can you do it yourself, or do you need some social media help, or do you need some email marketing help, or whatever it happens to be? And we have an ecosystem of service providers that can give proper quotes on that. And so we can build up launch costs and first year costs for a real business plan, rather than I'm going to budget $50,000 for this, but I don't really know. But there's a big advantage in having a real business plan. And most investors see budget plans because people haven't done the research to know, well, I actually need this amount of money to reach this goal in this particular way. Yeah. So it's something that's quite unique in what we've been building in these plans. And you'll see on the red writing at the top, we've got two types of plan. They're essentially the core plan is the same with a few variations, but how we present it is slightly different. So we've got one for bootstrap startups, and that's the core plan that we offer. But if you're seeking investment, if you're at the stage where you're saying, well, actually, I haven't got enough money, I need some pre-seed money to do this launch, but I need to know what the real costs are that I'm seeking. And then I need to get to investors, and I need to show them this. And this is what our investment plan is. So I'm gonna take you through some of the questions we've asked, and maybe you could give some feedback, Bill. I'll explain some of the logic behind it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I'm gonna go. So the first thing we ask is people's details, so that we can send them a report straight back on this, because it's automated. So the first question we want to know, Bill, before you write a plan to go to investors or to launch your business, is, do you have evidence of a customer need for your product or service? And that's a starting point. I don't know what your thoughts are on that being a starting point, but we've defined evidence up here as things like wait lists, customer interviews, pre-orders. We've defined specific things here.
Yeah, I can't imagine starting with a different question. This is the "why are we here" question.
Yep.
Is there even a reason to be here? And those are great examples of ways to get some of that evidence.
And this question really is one of the key questions, then driving what result we show you. So I'll show you two different examples here. So one is, let's say you don't have evidence. You're wanting a launch plan, but you don't have evidence of a
I've got an idea.
Yeah. So okay. So we're saying no. Do you have enough funding? No, you don't have enough funding because you're thinking you want to launch. Do you want help in pitching to investors? Yes.
Yeah.
So we've got this here. So you've come in because you're wanting an investment business plan, and you want to pitch to investors. Well, this is actually showing you that your stage isn't looking for investment. You're back at idea validation. I'm sorry, but you haven't collected enough evidence. One of the things, Bill, and I'd love to hear your thoughts here, is investors, as I mentioned earlier, like to see you scale sales. But if you haven't actually launched and you haven't got enough sales, you need to show them something. You need to show them some form of evidence. So that's where we're guiding people to say, well, if they haven't got that, we actually have a course, some tools, and expert coaches to be able to help you gain that evidence so you can go on to the next stage. So that's where we are with this first step. If you're saying you haven't got evidence, but if
I think that's tremendous. I mean, that's because what you've done here is you've helped someone, at least you've helped them probably from trying to scale too early or trying to do the wrong things first. I mean, building a product and doing some of that other stuff is kind of fun and glamorous. But if you don't even know who your customer is or what the problem is, or if anybody cares, we got to handle that first. Yeah, this might be the tough part, or the part that isn't your favorite. But 12 Ronnies here, obviously you're asking, you're trying to help people do the right thing, and do the thing right.
Yeah, and if people have got the evidence, this is where we can really look at how we can develop plans for them and investment plans. So if I go on to this one here and say, well, let's take it through to something where you have saying, yes, I've got evidence now. Do you have enough funds? No, because that's really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some pre-seed capital. Do you want help pitching to investors? I say, yes, I do. So we summarized your answers. We believe now, because of the evidence here, we can look at helping you with outside investment. And we have now, if I go into the details, what we have as a service here that is very specific to helping people get to investors. So the core of the service, if I come down, is a strategic planning tool that we provide to the founding team. We provide them with a whole ecosystem of service providers, but very importantly with that is this launch strategist, an accredited launch strategist, a professional to help you put together and manage this plan. And it means that you've effectively got a strategist and a project manager in one, and an ecosystem and the tools to put together a plan. But over and above that, what we've added for the investment service is these three things at the top. So we've added the pitch competitions. We've got a lot of connections with pitch competitions, business with investor pitch competitions. Now, if you've got a properly structured plan with real costs, and part of what we do at the bottom here is investor pitch deck. If you've got this, then we're putting you in the right place. We can submit you into relevant pitch competitions. We've a large investor network, and part of what we do with our service is direct investor introductions. And one of the important things with investor introductions is investors see so many plans and so many emails that they don't really have time to go through them all. And increasingly, they work off what they call warm introductions, warm leads. So if somebody they trust says to them, have a word with, these people have got a really good plan, or it's worth speaking to these people, they're more likely to take the introduction and speak to them. Because we're doing the due diligence at the back end, providing evidence, constructing a proper launch plan, things done professionally with an ecosystem so it's real. This means that our warm introductions have something solid behind them. And then the third thing is business plan competitions. There's lots out there, and they're a really good way to get out there into the competitive marketplace, and plenty of prizes to be won there to help with the funding. So, Bill, I'd love your thoughts now on this launch plan investment service that we've put together.
Yeah, if you're really serious about launching a serious product, this is the way to go. I mean, what you offering here are irreplaceable out in the real world. I mean, going out and trying to find people, sourcing pitch competitions, business plan competitions, trying to find investors, good luck. Because like you said, their doors are constantly being beaten upon. They're not interested in talking to you unless they know it's going to be worth their time. Even minutes of their time are very valuable. So having that warm introduction is huge. And in the investment, I think you're looking for here, pales in comparison to the value, because what you may be building something here that may be worth millions of dollars over the years, and I think this is a pretty small investment to make. But these are really great tools, and to have them all in one place and to have this sort of discipline in place, is second to none.
And thank you, Bill. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm just going to stop the sharing side of it, just to finish off here, showing you the process of why we ask questions and why we're steering people either to idea validation or to bootstrap business plan or to investment business plans, which are the three options that we see there. In that process, is there anything you would add, take away, streamline? I can re-show it to you briefly again if you want. Or is there anything on the top of your mind? Let me briefly show you. I'll go back, and so we've got find out if you qualify. So we've got the questions in here very briefly again is evidence of customer need. So yes or no. We've got, let's say you have that. Do you have enough funding? Well, this tells us whether you're going to bootstrap or whether you need to seek investment. So if it was a bootstrap one and say you've got enough, do you want help? So we're talking about why a professionally developed plan increases your chances of success and having an accredited service provider ecosystem. And then, of course, we've now got summary to launch plan that now doesn't involve the investor side of things. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what your thoughts were there, Bill.
Yeah, really, I think just at that final screen there for someone that really is still at the idea validation stage as a coach, at that point I would just want to know a little bit more about what have they done, what makes them feel like they've got something that they want to move forward with, and just helping them in that moment. I think so. Some mentorship at that point would probably be ideal. To help them understand, what do I need to do now?
Mentorship, brilliant. Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm going to start adding that because there's a few things we can offer around that on to the results pad. That's very useful and helpful. And actually,
it's the problem of I don't know what I don't know. So that's especially first time entrepreneurs. They've got a lot of energy. They got a great idea. They want to be successful, but they may not have all the tools yet. And learning them as they go is an expensive way to do it. So getting someone to help teach a little along that way and help them avoid the avoidable mistakes is a great step as well.
Fabulous. Thanks, Bill, and thank you, Chris. Earlier, I think the Q&A that you had and discussion that you had about being investment ready is very useful. We're going to publish this as a full live stream and also cut it up using our AI into segments that we'll post daily. A reminder to everybody: we run this every week, same time, which is 4 p.m. UK time, earlier in the mornings if you're in the States. Feel free. We're going to start doing this a lot more on a Q&A to the audience, and there's a very easy way to do this. You can put your comments into the comments section, whether you're listening on YouTube or on our LinkedIn or on our Facebook, and we're happy to answer questions there. If when seeing the live stream of this or the recording of this, you have any questions, still put them into the comments. We have a look for them every day, and we will answer your comments. One of our mentors will answer. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.